lot of companies start out by building their system to serve users, right? They say a user is a customer, and then they go like that for a couple of years. As they grow, they realize that, we can also serve organizations, not just individuals. And when you serve organizations, your per customer revenue can be sort of 2 to 5x greater, right? But the problem is you architected your system for individuals, right? And so that's one where people get basically stuck, right? You have two bad options. You can either try to continue to extend the basic plugin that you started with, or you can try to migrate. And I think the reason people don't migrate is because it looks like a 9-month process with lots of uncertainties. That's where we kind of come in with Sidecar.
Hi, this is your Sapnil Bhatia and welcome to TF Let's Talk. Today we have with us Tyler Warnock, CEO and co-founder of Userfront. Tyler, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Nice to be on the show.
It's my pleasure. And we, of course, cover security, authentication a lot on this channel. So our users, they are aware of not only a lot of technologies, paradigms, but also vendors, players in this space. This is the first time I'm talking to someone from Userfront. So I would love to know a bit about the company. What led you to co-found the company? What led you to co-found this company? What problem are you folks solving?
Userfront is an authentication and access control platform, as you mentioned. We're built specifically for helping SaaS companies win revenue and win customers through improved identity. It's a bit of a new take on it. We have everything from sort of MVP, just getting started, all the way up to enterprise Fortune 500, with everything framed specifically for customer-facing software companies. In today's market, scaling SaaS and hitting growth metrics is really hard. It's probably the most competitive it's ever been. And you have to really nail the customer experience. And so Userfront helps companies get a leg up by serving their customers better through improved auth and access control.
How is your approach different from some of either the existing technologies or the existing players? What sets you folks apart?
Yeah, I would say there's sort of two buckets as far as competitors go. There's legacy companies. Well, there's basically legacy and new, right? So legacy companies like Auth0, Cognito, they were started sort of 10, 15 years ago. The nature of auth is that once you have lots of customers using your system, you can't really change how it works, right? So that means that if you founded a company 15 years ago and you have thousands of customers, you're kind of locked in place and it's difficult to make decisions or changes. That's led to sort of the aging out of the legacy systems. They were built for the world 15 years ago, right? And so there are more modern ways to do things now, but it's difficult for them to adapt. So that's led to a second wave, a new wave of auth companies. And Userfront's one of the leading companies in the new wave, right? What's unique about us is that we're the only one focused on helping SaaS businesses, right? We do approach the problem space differently. And for SaaS companies, it's really brutal out there. It's competitive. You have to really delight your customers, right? People don't just swipe their credit card for anything. We built Userfront specifically for helping SaaS companies serve their customers better. And we put a lot of thought into sort of the key transition points for SaaS businesses where they can level up with their customers and basically charge more, right? So we packaged our product to help companies navigate those key transition points as they grow. And because we're focused on those transition points, we also really are focused deeply on migration, right? Because a lot of software companies chose something basic a few years ago, and they've since outgrown it. They don't really have good options for what to do now. So we have an internal tool called Sidecar, built specifically for easy system migration. That's kind of like for people who are a couple of years down the road. And then we have just really simple onboarding for startups that are just getting started.
There are a lot of players who have been around. You can call them legacy, you can call it traditional player, and then there are a lot of players who were born in the cloud native era. So how would you define yourself, and how do you see the traditional players? They are embracing some of those practices. At the same time, how newer players are also leveraging or benefiting from some of the traditional players because they have so much experience in this space as well.
We're absolutely one of the newer players. The fact is, with auth and access control, there's just a certain threshold you have to meet to be really useful, right? Like you can't have, for example, our customers have Fortune 500 company, and they do using them. That's not really something you can build in 6 months, right? It takes you a long time to get all the features that we have with just like passwords, passwordless, all the authentication, Google, Okta, whatever sign-on method you want, multi-factor auth, SMS, TOTP authenticator, all the way up to like role-based access control, data residency, compliance. Like there's a lot that goes into building a really solid auth platform. And so I think any company is going to take at least a couple of years to get up and going. And then from there, it's like, where do you start to differentiate yourself? We've chosen to differentiate ourselves by saying, this is a way that you can be really impactful on the customer experience. Some companies have chosen to differentiate themselves on, we're going to go really deep into passwordless or, certain features like that. We've taken more of a holistic sort of business driven view. We are absolutely standing on the shoulders of the legacy companies, right? Before the legacy companies existed, everyone kind of had to roll their own auth. That was not a great world to live in. And so they did create a ton of value in terms of like inventing JSON web tokens and inventing how you would do certain flows. But along the way, they also came up with things that they now have to support that maybe didn't win, right? A good example would be SRP, which is the way that Cognito does passwords by default. That's something that like, it was a good idea. It just didn't win, right? Password hashing won. But they still support that and they still put that out there. And so it's like kind of a weird quirk at this point. So we've absolutely kind of like looked and seen what works, what doesn't work. And we've just said, let's take the pieces that work and then let's build on top of that. And that means we don't have as much, cruft in our docs. We don't have as many, like, there's not like 10 different ways to do things and 9 of them are out of date. It's just much more like, here's the distilled version of what's the best practices over the last 10 years.
And can you also talk a bit about use cases, customers, kind of customers that you have?
Yeah, we serve hundreds of organizations today, from startups all the way to Fortune 500. Companies ultimately choose Userfront because they care about growing their business. But I would say we do two things really well, right? We make it very easy to get started, and we make it very easy to migrate from any system. We deal primarily with directors of engineering and IT, and of course the software developers who are implementing it. And so I would say for the startups, they care a lot more about moving fast and getting started quickly. And for sort of mid-market and up, they care a lot more about making the migration process really straightforward.
There are companies who have been around, they have their whole workflow, they have their whole setup. So talk a bit about helping some of those brownfield deployments, enterprise customers move easily, and which once again brings back to the point of some of the edges that you have over either traditional players or the new players.
Nobody is looking to migrate their auth system just to do it, right? And so we focus on a few key transition points where it really makes a big difference. A great example is a lot of companies start out by building their system to serve users, right? They say a user is a customer, and then they go like that for a couple of years. As they grow, they realize that, we can also serve organizations, not just individuals. And when you serve organizations, your per customer revenue can be sort of 2 to 5x greater, right? But the problem is you architected your system for individuals, right? And so that's one where people get basically stuck, right? You have two bad options. You can either try to continue to extend the basic plugin that you started with, or you can try to migrate. And I think the reason people don't migrate is because it looks like a 9-month process with lots of uncertainties. That's where we kind of come in with Sidecar. Sidecars are an internal tool. It can mimic any authentication system. So we're talking API endpoints, access tokens, data structures, and it's designed to be a drop-in replacement for an existing system, or I should say a drop-in upgrade. Basically, step one is you put it in the middle. It mimics your existing system while also reading from your existing system. And that takes the migration from sort of a 9-month process with lots of uncertainty. We can usually get a migration from, say, Cognito or something like that done in 2 or 3 weeks. And we do it in a way that requires very few code changes on our customer's end and also doesn't impact their end users. And so people are researching options. Like they say, we had this problem, we need to add organizations. Another transition point would be we need to start serving enterprise. They're doing their research. They say, okay, we either need to extend or we need to migrate. They come across us. They realize that the migration is really not bad. That's really where we get a lot of our business from.
Can you also talk about what does your offering look like?
So it kind of depends on what your entry point is. If your entry point is a startup and you're just getting started and you don't have an existing system, basically our approach is start fast and free, right? So in about 5 minutes, you go through, configure your authentication, whether that's passwordless, sign on with Google, passwords, login links, whatever, multi-factor auth, any of the factors that your customers want. You style it to look how you want. So you can style the forms to look how you want. No user-front branding, do it however you want. And then code snippets to add it to your website or app, whatever framework you're using. That's like the first 5 minutes, right? So you're up and going, you have a login, sign up form working. In about 30 minutes, backend code installed, you're reading the tokens, you're ready to go, right? So it's all about moving fast and free. For brownfield customers who already have systems in place, we start by saying, what is your system, obviously? And then we have modules that we've written for various different off-the-shelf systems. So a good example would be if you're coming from, let's say, a Cognito, we have a Cognito migration module where we can go through, you put in a couple of your credentials, we spin up a container that sort of handles the mimicry, and it's ready in 5-10 minutes, right? And so from there you can start migrating customers. You basically log in through the sidecar into your existing system, and once they do that, it's migrated that user and their credentials. So you leave that in place as long as you want, and then when you're ready to shut off the old service, you shut it off, and you're good to go on the new service.
Now I want to talk about, earlier you mentioned, the cost, the business aspect. So I want to also understand, when we look at authentication access control, it's more of, solving a technology problem, or you also look at it as cost, efficiency, or grow revenue. What is the business side of authentication or Userfront?
Yeah, I think some people say, is auth really a revenue driver, right? It is absolutely a revenue driver. And when you go from, like I said, there's a couple of transition points. When you go from selling to individuals to selling to organizations, that can be sort of a 2 to 5x increase in per customer revenue. When you go from mid-market to enterprise, it's usually basically startup to mid-market to enterprise, it's like a couple of orders of magnitude each time, right? And I think it's important to note that you can have the exact same core product, right? There are customers out there who aren't buying your product solely because you're not meeting them where they are, right? You don't have the right flows for inviting team members. That way they can't get organizational buy-in. You don't offer the sign-on or logging that they need for compliance. Essentially, your best potential customers have organizational barriers to buying your software, right? Many of those organizational barriers are almost entirely related to authentication and access control. And the problem is most of them don't tell you that, right? And so our customers often see tremendous growth once they have these things, right? We have a customer right now who's closing an enterprise deal. We've rolled out some data residency features for them, and that deal is going to add 20% total to their top line revenue, right? It's a great feeling for us to help them do that, but they're doing that by adding identity and access management, not by improving their core product. Obviously, they're improving their core product too, but it's an organizational buy-in issue, and that is almost entirely related to auth.
What are the things that are in your pipeline? What are the things that you folks are working on? Of course, there are a lot of things you cannot share. We will talk about it when they're ready, but just give us a teaser, a glimpse.
So for us, the core service is all there already, right? We're not adding basic authentication features at this point. So we really build for two extremes, right? The first is that we make it incredibly simple for companies to get started at the beginning, and that's an iterative process. We're always trying to make that better. And the second is that we're adding advanced features that our customers care about. So for the first one, for getting started and making it really easy, we're doing things like revamping our Next.js tooling. We have things, React, Vue, Angular, Node, Python, all of the above. Iterate on those materials over and over and over. We talk to our customers, we talk to software developers. Let's make it easier. Let's make it easier. Let's make it easier. So realistically, we'll always be doing that, right? That's something that we spend a lot of time focusing on. And then the second one, for our customers' advanced features, data residency I mentioned earlier, specifically being able to spin up a custom instance anywhere in the world. This is something that's very important for financial services, regulated governments, Fortune 500, being able to say, we're going to isolate this in this geography. As I mentioned, we have a customer who's closing an enterprise deal right now, and that's going to bump their company up 20% top line revenue. Features like that, where it's like really making an impact to the customer, that's the other end of the extreme that we're focused on.
Tyler, thank you so much for joining me today. Talk about Userfront, talk about the whole ecosystem, the challenges, space, and how you folks are solving those problems. Thanks for great insights, and I look forward to chat with you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say for anyone watching, if you're a startup, go to userfront.com, start fast and free. If you started a couple of years ago and maybe don't love the choices that, or maybe now you don't, the choices that you made aren't keeping up with you, also come to Userfront. We have migrations to make things really easy for you. We'd love to chat with you.